He has been taught the mystic arts of the ninja.
We are talking G.I. Joe, Snake Eyes. This is an 18-minute short film, a fan film directed by Rene Perez. Now you can watch this film right now, or maybe after this review. I will leave the link to the full movie in the description box below. Please go and check it out and see for yourself. So this is a fan film. Now we've reviewed a few fan films here. So they're a little bit of a different rules because obviously they do not have huge investment behind them. They're not made to necessarily make money as such, so we can't be quite as critical in regards to any budgetary restraints. That being said, Rene Perez is actually quite a prolific director, and we've reviewed many of his films here at the Geek Legion of Doom. So he is an established B-movie director, and I have to say, I do really enjoy a lot of his films. Some of them arguably are somewhat of a guilty pleasure, because objectively, they maybe not always all that good, but there are some films that I've legitimately liked, and even ones that I've not liked quite as much, they're still kind of quite fun in a trashy B-movie, guilty pleasure kind of way. So, what is the story here? Well, it follows, obviously, Snake Eyes, a member of G.I. Joe, as he is on the run, a rogue agent, if you will, on the run from a variety of military types that are chasing him through the woods. He is also trying to meet up with this kind of woman who is obviously somewhat of a friend to him. Will he meet her? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss Snake Eyes. What works, first of all? Okay, one quick thing, the music is fantastic. I really enjoyed the music here. It gives it certainly a retro feel. The movie also starts with this cool little kind of like nostalgic 80s sort of style clip, which I kind of wish they maybe had employed for the rest of the film, but nonetheless, there you go. Let's talk about Snake Eyes himself. He's instantly recognisable as the classic era Snake Eyes, with a very pretty good looking like headpiece, which I think is the iconic look for Snake Eyes. He's also obviously a martial arts expert here, depicted well by the actor who is clearly a gifted martial artist, and he has his signature not speaking, the guy's a mute. So it's somewhat kind of comics accurate or cartoon accurate. There are a couple of things I have an issue with, which we'll talk about in a minute. But let's talk about what else worked. Okay, so Rene Perez, as I've mentioned, is an experienced and prolific B-movie director. And he, to me, has a distinct style. He likes these kind of very much washed out kind of a feel to it. He loves filming in bright sunlight with kind of wide open spaces. Loves the kind of the natural environment. So we have a lot of kind of scenes filmed in the forest and things like that. And is a gifted cinematographer, I feel. Action sequences I feel are very stylistic. He has a very unique style that I feel you can instantly kind of recognise if you're familiar with his work. And, I'd actually call myself a Rene Perez fan, even though I don't always like his stuff. But I feel this movie is instantly recognisable with his style. And if you're familiar with it and you've watched his films before, you kind of know what to expect here. I think the action here is pretty well shot and choreographed. In actual fact, I think this is probably the goriest you're ever going to see a G.I. Joe character depicted on screen, with heads exploding, people getting stabbed, necks broken, all of that kind of stuff. Doesn't flinch away from the gore, so I feel that, if you want a hyper-violent depiction of a G.I. Joe character, this is made for you. So the film is pretty much all action as well. So it is start to finish an action set piece, and obviously I feel it has a relatively high production value for what obviously is a fan film. As I say, very well shot, great music. I think the actor does a pretty good job here of giving a visual representation of what Snake Eyes will be like. Bit of body acting, stuff like that, and is somewhat accurate to the actual source material itself. Okay, maybe what doesn't work. I'm going to carry on what I said about the source material here, because as much as I think Snake Eyes in this film is instantly recognisable as that great character, there are some things that are missing. Primarily his weapons. Now, Snake Eyes in this film fights with a variety of weapons, but to me, he's missing his signature Uzi machine gun, which I think is part of the character, and also, you know, his sword. Those two weapons tend to be the defining weapons for this sort of character, and it's a shame that he doesn't have them within this. And we see, you know, shotguns and different machine guns, even a throwing star and the dagger and stuff. But to me, it was a missed opportunity to have these kind of signature weapons that's there. I think as well, it looks like he's wearing kind of motocross armour. I get that you know, obviously we're at a budget restraint here, and it kind of looks okay, to be fair, but and you can't always go exactly like a kind of accurate if you're doing a fan film, because there are some copyright restrictions that may happen if you use, you know, go too far with it. So I kind of get that to a certain degree. But on the same lines, I feel one of the kind of the major missed opportunities here would be the antagonists, because to be honest with you, if I have to say one major problem, is they're all faceless goons. I feel the biggest missed opportunity for this film was not to have our bad guys be Cobra Troopers. You can still have them faceless goons, but at least have some more accurate uniforms to the comics. I mean, they're not mega budget ones. It's essentially like a kind of, you know, a blue uniform, a black scarf, and a kind of like a, you know, a painted helmet, really. I get maybe you couldn't have the logo for copyright, you know, you staying away from that. But even in the kind of the mainstream films, you know, they kind of modernised it and stuff like that. I think it would have been cool to have more of the kind of like more of a, even if it's kind of a referencing or shouting back, maybe not exactly, but kind of more of the classic look for the kind of the Cobra Troopers, even if they were Cobra Troopers. That to me was a bit of a missed opportunity. I think probably what has happened is that Rene Perez has just got a bunch of costumes left over from a variety of films and just kind of used them. The other thing I would say, similar to that, would have been to have a more of a central antagonist. We have our kind of faceless goons, but it would have been nice to have a character as a antagonist for Snake Eyes to kind of play across. Now, our go-to one will be Storm Shadow. This, of course, is his major kind of nemesis in the comics and cartoons. And a white ninja costume, not all that expensive, could have been made pretty easily. I would have personally, had they done this, maybe gone for someone else, because we have seen Storm Shadow in both the kind of the mainstream G.I. Joe films, and that was quite a good visual depiction of Storm Shadow. So maybe it would have maybe Big Boa, who was kind of like a Cobra boxer, or maybe a comic book accurate Zartan, something like that. You could even have the Dreadnoks as kind of like your goons then. Again, it's a little bit of a missed opportunity because you never really feel there's much of a threat. They're just kind of faceless goons. And this is a complaint I've had of Rene Perez and some of his other films. It's waves and waves of faceless goons, and the action seems a little mundane when we kind of keep having that, to be honest. Okay, which leads me on to my next critique, is that there's really not a lot of story in this short film. It's 18 minutes, about a minute of credits, so 17 of actual film footage, and it's just one big action sequence in the woods, and that's, you know, it's exciting for what it is, but you know, with a 17-minute film, you could have had a little bit more story going on, because at the moment it gets a little bit dull, to be honest. Now, you might say, oh, what about the female kind of character? Because surely that's another story. That, to me, seems like reshoots that have been added on to this pre-existing kind of action sequence, because it seems so out of place, and well, you know, I don't want to kind of spoil anything, but it doesn't really have any bearing on what's actually happening in Snake Eyes scenes, to be honest. It just looks like it's been added on later on and doesn't really have any impact on the actual story itself. It just seems like that's an attempt to try and add a story like kind of later on in like post-production, when maybe they should have thought about that a little bit more whilst they were making it. And if they were going to do it, have a red-headed woman, make it Scarlet, easy. That's another little callback to have there. You know, I get maybe you couldn't have Timber, Snake Eyes' as Wolf, because for a fan film, you know, it's too much of a kind of a hassle to do animal training and all of that. but it would have been easier to have these kind of callbacks, I feel. So as it stands at the moment, I feel the movie is pretty well made, great cinematography. The action sequences are good, although there are a couple of instances where I feel the choreography wasn't quite up to par. There are a couple of scenes where some of the punches look like they're a little slow. Obviously, the actors are trying to pull their punches. For the most part, it's okay, but just once or twice, I feel that it looks like, you know, play acting rather than actual fights. I do think they could have been more made of the actual. If you're going to do a Snake Eyes fan film, go all in. Make it like kind of like the nostalgia factor. Make it like the cartoon. Make it like the kind of the comic books, because the movies will try and kind of modernise it and kind of evolve it into try and make it more of a, you know, not quite as a nostalgia, but people who watch fan films, they want to have that nostalgia. They want to kind of like see things that they're not going to see in the mainstream films. And I feel the movie does do some of that, certainly with the good of the gore here, because the movie really doesn't shy away from the violence, and this is probably the only time you're ever going to see heads explode and things like violent deaths in a G.I. Joe film. Yeah, it just kind of like, as it stands at the moment, it's enjoyable, but generic, unfortunately. But it's a fun 17 minutes out of your day, especially if you're a G.I. Joe fan. As I've said, please go and check it out. I will leave the link in the description box below. And please let me know what your thoughts are on it. Did you enjoy it? Did you disagree or agree with any of my points? Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.